Look at that. All right. So welcome. And let me go back to sharing my screen. And I think we're good to go. There it is. Okay. We are at part 2 of connecting kids and families to summer learning opportunities. Last week we had part 1 of this, and this is part of a series of town halls, community town halls we've been holding virtually, hosted by United Way. And it's been part of an ongoing now plus over a year's effort of bringing a community opportunity to hold a forum like this about issues important to this community, especially as we've navigated through COVID and now as we navigate out of COVID. So this particular topic about summer learning opportunities is certainly an important one. And while United Way is hosting it, it certainly has been made possible by the many community educators and youth advocates of our community who want to make sure that parents and caregivers and youth of our community know about the various summer learning opportunities and various ways to engage in learning, maybe even through play. So that's going to be a big part of today's conversation, as we have 2 experts from Mark First who will really speak to some of the reasons why this is so important and how you can do even some of the simple at-home activities that can really make a difference. As I mentioned, this is part of a series of town halls that we've been holding. I have put our Facebook logo or Facebook URL on there because while we don't have any further town halls scheduled as of right now after tonight's event, please continue to watch our Facebook page and like our Facebook page so that you can see any other events like this or other informational opportunities that might come up in the coming months. All right, so that's my my commercial pitch for that. So now last week we heard from a variety of, let me advance the slide here, a variety of community educators listed here. Normal Parks, Bloomington Parks, the libraries, you can see the list there. It's probably a dozen or so organizations. And for anyone who was there, knows that it blew us all away, the information that is that they shared with us and the opportunities that are available. At the bottom of the screen here is a link, and you're going to see this several times. I will put it in the chat box, but if you go to our United Way website, uwaymc.org, and go to our COVID link that's right on the landing page, there will be a resources tab. And in that is a whole list of various resources we have assembled over the past year. And if you go to For Families with Children, Parents and Caregivers, listed in alphabetical order, so scroll down a bit, you will find all of the information that was shared by these resources last week, including a link to the recording of last week's town hall. So if you're just here tonight catching up, we've got the resources available for you to catch up. But I want to, before we get into our key speakers for tonight, I want to introduce 2 more that didn't have a chance to speak last week for one reason or another, scheduling conflicts or whatnot. But we certainly want to hear from them briefly. And that's Karen Zangerly from PATH. And then after her, I will introduce Desiree Campbell from Eastview's Bloomington Community Center. So Karen, do you have a screen that you would like to share?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
Okay, that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah,
I'll just stop sharing now so that people can focus on you.
Okay, that would be fine.
And let you speak, and I'll put information in the chat box too for any of our participants.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk for a few minutes about what's happening this summer for youth. I want to start the conversation with people who can call 211 to ask questions, find out more about this, or you can go on findhelp211.org, get you into a web page, although our new website isn't being loaded until tomorrow. The other thing I want you to know is that you can text 211. If you would send your zip code to TXT211, we can talk that way about what you're needing, and you don't have to even talk. We'll just back and forth and give you the information. So there were some great places that you heard from last week. One of the things that we want to make sure got noted somewhere, and we didn't know where that might land, is summer food. There are a number of schools that are serving hot lunches. Boys and Girls Club, you can get hot lunches at. Even Bloomington High School, you can go and grab a meal. And there are some mobile feeding stops around the community at Holton Homes, Second Presbyterian Church, First Christian Church, and the Woodhill family. Again, this information is readily available by dialing 211. For those people who have special needs, Easter Seals has their annual summer camps that are very exciting. And there is a summer job program for youth 18 and older. And for you're learning some basic skills that will help you to find a permanent job. I always have to mention the YMCA. They have a lot of things going on. And this summer, they are doing basketball, performing arts, doing the American Red Cross program, swim lessons, and summer day camps. So if you are seeking valuable experiences for your child or children, the database we have at the office, we'll check it and give you all the details, phone numbers, dates, addresses. And thank you again to United Way for hosting these town halls. I think they've been very informative, and I've heard such good things about them. And I'm very pleased that I got to speak for at least a few minutes on the last one tonight.
Thank you, Karen. So just to recap, I put in the chat box, call 211, go online by visiting findhelp211.org or texting TXT211. All different ways to get a hold of PATH, where they've got a master database of things to do and additional resources like summer food, hot lunches. I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't able to keep up with all of the different mobile food sources, but that's good to know. I think you mentioned a couple of churches. So contact PATH for those details. I'm glad you mentioned Easter Seals, an excellent organization and provider of very valuable opportunities for kiddos, and then YMCA. Yes. So thank you for touching on those. And as soon as you have a link that you feel comfortable with putting up for your new website to this information, we'd be happy to post that on our resources page as well.
Okay, great.
Okay. Desiree, I see you there. Wonderful. So Desiree Campbell, I'm going to turn it over to you for a couple of minute commercial on all the great things you told me about just a few days ago that your Eastview Community Center in Bloomington is doing. So do you need to share a screen?
I do not. Thank you though
Okay.
for asking.
All righty.
Thank you again for the opportunity. I agree with Karen at United Way and putting these meetings together. It's an honor to be able to be a part of. So thank you for allowing me to do that as well. Eastview Bloomington Community Center. We are at 401 Union Street. We are on the west side of town. We have an array of events. We are traditionally offering community financial assistance, our food pantry out of that location, as well as our traditional Sunday worship service. But we also have our other current events that take place, and those change quite frequently. Currently, right now, we are offering for single moms. We have a group where we offer just a place of rest, to do life together as single moms, equip them with proper tools that they may need to move through the community, as well as we provide a meal and childcare. This happens the first Sunday and third Sunday of every single month at the Bloomington campus. They just need to go out to our website to register for that, so we could just collectively know how many people are going to be there to have enough food for said mommies and kiddos. All of this information that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, you can either reach us at the eastview.church/community center, or you can email us directly at info@eastviewcommunitycenter.com. We also are we are partnering with Integrity Counseling here in town, and we are doing summer survival parenting classes. It's a Love and Logic inspired based program that we're partnering with them. Registration for that closes on June 1st. And that will also be a place where parents can bring their kids. We will have babysitters there that will take care of their kids during this 7-week session. We also will be launching our Wednesday night community nights. This is not a structured event by any means, but it just offers a safe place for families to do life together that will be held in our parking lot every Wednesday night from June 1st to August 5th. And that will be food provided, music and entertainment, yard games, and just an area and a space to fellowship and embody the community as a whole. So there's many different activities and events that are coming through. So we hope to launch some community financial freedom classes here in the next couple of weeks. Dates yet to be confirmed, but that will also be on our website, as well as, again, if you need any information, please feel free to email us at the info@eastviewcommunitycenter.com. That's all I got. Thanks so
Great.
much.
Can you repeat the website? I'll put that in the chat box.
Yes, eastview.church/community center. It's just the short link that will get you to any other events that need to be registered for.
Eastview.church /
Community center.
Community Center, one word.
Right.
.org.
Nope, just /
That gets
.church.
you to the page. Okay.
Oh yeah, it takes you. It's just a short link. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, a lot of that information, I hope I captured accurately in the chat box. Both of you, Karen and Desiree, might want to just fact check me there and make sure that everything was right. Thank you both for providing that additional information about additional resources. As though we didn't hear enough last week, gosh, there's still more. So thank you. Okay, let me return to sharing my screen, because I think at this point now we want to introduce our featured speakers. And let me go there. There we go. From Mark First Pediatrics Therapy, we have Mary Lehman, a licensed clinical social worker and development therapist. Mary has been at Mark First for 13 years and has over 30 years providing counseling and support to children and family of our community. So truly an expert. And with her is Christy Kasharik, also of Mark First, has over 25 years experience working with families and children, and is a developmental therapist and evaluator for a state early intervention system. And I want to give credit to, and I think she's on the line here, Amy Hancock from McLean County Health Department, who helped put me in touch with Mary and Christy. And we thought that as a nice kind of complimentary piece to last week's literal download of all the things you could do, that it would be helpful to follow up tonight with hearing from some experts about, okay, well, what do I do? What's important? Because all that we have shared maybe isn't right for everyone, you know? So what is it that you need? Why is it that you maybe need to think about what your children and family needs? And those kind of what and why and how are the things that Mary and Christy will help us unpack tonight. So without further ado, I think I will stop sharing at this point my screen and turn it to Mary or Christy. And if you need sharing responsibility or abilities, I can do that for you. So just let me know.
Yeah, if you could set Mary up to be able to
Mary,
share her screen,
will.
that would be wonderful. And Mary and I are both so excited tonight to be here representing Mark First. Whenever we
There
look
you go,
at
Mary.
Mark First and our mission in the community, part of our mission is making sure that individuals are reaching their fullest potential. And I really felt like, Kathleen, whenever you first reached out to us and we talked about this opportunity, that's really what it was all about, was helping make sure that children are reaching their full potential and having these opportunities in the community. And wow, last week was so great to hear about all these different resources that we have. We're such a resource rich community, and then to hear about more tonight, it was just really inspiring and fun to hear. So it was really wonderful to see all those resources available. And so Mary and I are here tonight to talk about, so, you know, we have all these wonderful resources. And what does that mean for our children? And what does that mean for us as the adults in their lives that are helping to try to look at what options are out there and what's really best for us to be doing? And so, Mary, I guess one thing that I kind of think about whenever it comes to this is why engage children in some of those summer learning opportunities? And I really like that word engage, because it's not just about participating, it's about really engaging. So why would that maybe be helpful?
So sure. There are so many benefits, it's hard to list, but if we look at them in categories, I think the most important one is fun. It is so important for kids to be having fun, because we know people of all ages, when they're having fun, they are engaged. Engaged is that active involvement. And that's what we want. When people are having fun, no matter how old you are or how young you are engaged. And when you're engaged, you can learn. When you're engaged, you are interacting with other people. You can make friends. You're doing things together. You're learning those social interactions that are so essential. And a lot of the activities you get to also have some physical activities. So there's so many different things to do. And we're so lucky. I appreciated hearing from Desiree and from Karen tonight about the additional activities. We also wanted to point out from the activities last week that many of them offered some low or no cost activities. And so we want to make sure to highlight that too, because these activities this summer, they can be about structured activities, but they can also be things that you do at home with your family for fun. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
And I really appreciate, Mary, that you mentioned that piece about fun. Because I know as an adult, if I'm having fun in whatever I'm doing, I learn so much more, and the time just flies, right? And it's a good time for everyone. So I think it's important to think about that importance of play for all ages, adults and children. So
yes, this is my favorite quote pretty much of all time. I have lots of favorite quotes, but definitely with kids and with adults, because it's true for us too. Play is our brain's favorite way of learning. And that can be learning anything. That can be learning math. It can be learning how to relate to another person. It can be using your imagination. So it is so important.
absolutely. That time spent in play is really wonderful for children as they learn and grow. And as we think about that time spent, you know, we also think about having some downtime, right? As adults, we need some downtime for our brains to kind of recover and our bodies recover. So what about having that downtime for children?
Yeah, and so this is this can actually become a somewhat controversial aspect of summer. Who thought that summer could be controversial? But there are some different schools of thought about what you should do with your kids over the summer. You know, one school of thought is that you should get them into lots of structured activities, so they're not missing any precious moments of learning so that they're not lapsing on all the things they last learned during the last school year, so that they're continuing to make friends. Well, there's definitely some pieces about that that's accurate. But then there's another theory that says you should allow kids to have some downtime so that they can learn how to have some unstructured time so that they can pursue their own interests. And so just like whenever there's two different theories about things, there's usually aspects about both of them that are right, and then aspects that each family has to look at what's best for their child and their family. And so when we look at that, first of all, I think we'd all agree we all need vacations, right? We can't work 52 weeks a year and feel very productive. We all need vacation. We all need some downtime. It allows us to be creative. It allows us to relax, and it allows us to find ways to express ourselves. There's research out there that says, if you don't have kids engaged in structured learning, they're going to lose certain pieces of information that they learned over the school year. And I mean, I'm not going to disagree with scientific studies. I think there's some pieces of that. But I think what they found is that over the summer, if you are engaging kids in some type of learning, any type of learning, that could be reading a book, that could be learning how to bake a cake, we're using that math and measurements. It could be going out in nature and, counting, the petals on flowers to figure out what kind of flower that is. There are so many ways to be using your mind and to do it in different ways than kids might have the opportunity to do in school. And that's what's important, is that you're keeping those neural networks charged and learning, keeping that learning going. So, and you can do that through structured activities, and you can do that like we talked about. You can do that with your kids or your grandkids at home. So what we really need is a balance. We all need a break, and we all sometimes need a boost. I think we can all relate to, if we do, and now I'll just let y'all know, Christy's my boss, right? So she's my boss. So I do love my job. That is the absolute truth. But sometimes I need something a little bit different to do, something different to kind of get my mind going and my thoughts going and get re-energized on a little different track. And Christy knows that about me, and she's great about coming up with things where I can use my brain and my creativity in different ways, because that energizes me and it helps me learn, and it helps me to even, find even new and better and different ways to reach families. So we all need those little boosts of exposure to different things and learning different things to help keep our mind going, to help keep us energized and interacting with other people.
Mary, I really like what you said about balance, really trying to find that balance between, structured activities and unstructured activities, and what that can look like for children. And when I think back to my childhood, I can kind of think back to some of those learning experiences that were really play experiences when I was a child that I engaged in. And so I'm wondering, I'll share a little bit about one that's kind of important to me, or, that really stands out for me. And I'd love to hear, Mary, about maybe some play experiences that you had as a child. But I'm thinking, like, one of my favorite things was my parents owned a heating and air conditioning business. And so my dad had access to giant cardboard boxes all the time at work. And so he would bring those boxes home, and I absolutely loved creating my own little cardboard houses. And I had two older brothers, and to be honest, I'd probably be a little bossy sometimes. I think I was the foreman in the house building project. And, I would ask them to help me cut out doors and windows. And then I would take my crayons and my markers and my paints and paint window boxes and paint doors different colors, and, paint the roof a different color, and, like decorate my home. And sometimes I take a couple boxes and create different rooms in my house. And so That's when I think back to some of the things that I did. That's one of the things that really sticks out to me, which wasn't a structured play activity, but a lot of learning that happened there. And I don't know if you had similar experiences within your own childhood where maybe you had an opportunity to be a little creative.
Yes, one of my favorite things I remember from being a kid is that the next door neighbor kid and I, we'd get like, well, back then they had paper catalogs with pictures and all that. They don't have those anymore, but they do have newspaper inserts. And we would cut things out, like we'd cut things out like sofas and clothes and, food that we'd want. And we'd make this pretend little house on the garage wall. We'd tape up our little pictures and pretend they were like our little houses. And it just gave us that great chance of creativity and ownership and working together and talking to each other about what we were doing. Another thing that I really enjoyed as a kid was swim lessons. And you might not think of swimming as learning, but it really was learning. I learned how to swim, which was a great life skill. I learned how to interact with other kids swimming. And I also learned or tried to learn how to confront my fears, because our swim lessons were in an old quarry and there was the deep end, which was really deep. And they would have us, nobody forced you, but you got that chance to jump off a small building into the deep end. And it was a way of facing your fears. And so even though we didn't pull out any books in swim class, I learned so many things. And so any of these types of learning, any of these types of activities can benefit kids in so many ways, in social ways, in cognitive ways, in overcoming your fear kind of ways, or being okay with the fact that some kids don't feel comfortable doing that. And that's okay too. It's okay to be different than your friends. You don't have to follow the leader. So, if the other kids are doing it, that doesn't mean you have to. So there's so many things you can learn from all of these types of activities. I wonder if anybody in our audience has any thoughts about fun things they did as a kid, because that can be a good thing for parents to think about too. Were there things that I did or that we did in my family or with my cousins or with, my grandparents that I'd like to bring back to my family?
I think it can be a fun thought, Mary, to kind of think back to our own childhoods and the type of play activities we did, because sometimes as adults, we kind of lose that ability to play almost, or, it doesn't feel as natural anymore to play. And so sometimes thinking back to those things that we did as children can help get us engaged with our own children and their play activities. Like I loved Play-Doh. And so it's something that very naturally and easily comes back to me whenever I engage and play with children is let's get out the Play-Doh and start creating things.
Christy, we get to work with lots of kids and families. So we have lots of ideas just in our regular work that help kids and families learn. But as part of doing this presentation, of course, I did, what do you do, right? You Google things and you see what can you find on the internet. And there is so much out there, and so much out there for free. There were some take-home camp kits that you can get for free. They talked about lots of cooking recipes you can do with kids. Most of us are familiar with Pinterest, which has just more that makes my brain explode with creativity. I love it. So there's so many great ideas out there. One of the ones I thought was really cool that I wanted to share with the group tonight was they actually talked about, now this would be with kids that are old enough. If you have like an older camera, even or phone that isn't, that can take pictures, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like hooked up to a carrier anymore. If the phone just takes pictures itself, or if you have an old digital camera. A really cool idea they talked about was letting the kids take the camera, again, that you wouldn't be upset about losing, right? This is an old one, and letting them just take pictures and then show you and then talk about them. And if they're old enough, they could put them in a book form on the computer, or they could, write to their grandparents and send them a picture, even if it's an email. But these again are a way of taking that creativity and taking that learning and using the skills they've learned in school, right? The reading and the writing, and using it in a new way. So
Absolutely. And Mary, you mentioned, I mean, there's so many resources out there, right? And you talked about Pinterest can sometimes almost make your head feel like exploding. There's so much. And so I guess from a parent perspective, how do you decide? Like there's so many options and so many things to do. It can be really easy to overschedule yourself as a family. So any advice for parents on how to kind of decide or guide them in making a decision about what activities for their children?
sure. I think there's several things to consider. And I think some of the most important things are to look at what is your child interested in. My dad would always say, if you find something that sparks a child's interest, you've got them learning. If they are interested, they are going to learn. And I think that's absolutely the truth. And sometimes kids don't know yet. So just giving them some different options. But if your child's showing some interest in things, that's a great direction to go. And then I think another important thing, this has been such a difficult year and a quarter almost we're at for the world, where we've had a lot of isolation. And, some kids and families may have had more exposure to things outside the home than others. So we're coming at things from different places. And it's important to realize that this year is a little different than we've ever experienced in our lifetime. We're sort of, as a society, trying to find ways to reintroduce the community aspects of things. And so another thing that I think is very important for parents to think about this summer is there's some way of engaging your child with other kids, whether that's in person or if that's not possible, or if it's a health concern for a child and family, that's okay too. Are there ways to do it? And I know we're probably getting a little sick of Zoom meetings, but still socializing by Zoom or even by telephone, those things are very, very important for kids. So if there's some way to have some interactions for your kids and activities, I think that's really great. And of course, I think most people have learned that one of the benefits of Zoom is that you can have friends just about anywhere. You can, connect with distant relatives that may have distant cousins, and if they're your kid's age, they might have some fun doing things via Zoom with each other, or people from church or people from school. But however you feel safe having your child do some social interactions with other kids, that's great. Some parents feel comfortable doing like socially distant outdoor things. Some parents feel comfortable doing indoor things, and anything is okay. Whatever your family feels comfortable with, that is what to do, and don't do things that you're not comfortable with. But just having some type of social contact with kids is really important this summer. And then I think the next most important thing is what is doable for your family. Last week, we got so many ideas of amazing community resources. Christy and I have lived here for 25 plus years, and I keep learning new wonderful things about our community, and our community keeps developing new and wonderful things, new resources, new opportunities for kids and families. So we heard about a tremendous amount of those, and those are wonderful if you can do them and you want to do them, but you don't have to do those structured activities. And what's most important is to do what you're comfortable with. Don't try to sign up for too many things. We want both you as parents and your children to be engaged in things that are comfortable for you as a family, that get you some new stimulation and learning and opportunities, but nothing that makes you feel overwhelmed. So.
Well, and Mary, you talked about that piece of, what you as a family are comfortable with. And sometimes this happens when we sign kids up for things, right? They get signed up, they're all excited, they've talked about it, they feel like it's an interest of theirs, and then maybe they go to that first event, or that first class or whatever, and then they come home and they're like, I don't want to do this. You know, or especially this year, maybe there's some social anxiety because we haven't really been in groups yet. And so do you have any advice for parents kind of thinking about a situation like that that could come up as they're reintroducing maybe some new experiences for their children?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question, and I'm going to break it up into two parts. So
Mhm.
right now, I'd like to talk about the part of, which is pretty much a universal theme for kids and sometimes even grown-ups, where you really, really want to do something and you try a few lessons and you're like, oh, I hate that. I don't ever want to do that again, right? Like we all know people, including me, like I didn't settle on my first instrument. In fact, I think I went through 3 by the time I got to be a grown-up. But you know, so all kids experience that. And even as grown-ups, we experience that, right? We might try a new meeting for a while and then decide, you know, this just isn't the right fit for me. So, and just in terms of looking at what if kids decide they're just not interested in the activity? And I'm going to separate that from what happens if they're experiencing some social anxiety. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So I think the very best recommendation for that is to listen to your child and see if there's something that's really truly making them anxious. Of course, we want to listen to them about that situation. But if it's more like, oh, that just wasn't as much fun as I thought it was, I think then it's okay to say, we're going to try it. We're going to try it so many times. I'm sorry, I need to take just a brief moment and I'll be right back.
Yes, thanks, Mary. I think that definitely as we think about those different options for children and really trying to have that balance for them, you know, I appreciate that Mary's looking at this question in 2 parts, looking at the child's interest, but then also possibly that anxiety piece, because some of us as adults might have experienced some of that social anxiety piece as things have started to open back up and going back out in public and wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. And so it's important for us to think about those social emotional needs of the children who are engaged in the activities and their mental health needs as we reopen and start looking at group experiences again.
Thank you, Christy, and thanks. Pardon my brief absence. So yeah, so if we go back to talking about the activities, I think as a family, the parents can decide what do we feel like is fair to our children for giving it a try. And I think that's something that you can talk to your child about as you sign up for the event. Say, you know, your child's really, really, really excited to try, I don't know, I'm going to pick something out of the hat, hockey, right? I don't even know if they do that in the summer, but let's just say hockey, right? So, you know, and you know, you make the investment in the lessons and the equipment and things like that. And then after 3 sessions, they you know, or 2 sessions, they want to quit. Well, I mean, of course, if there's some really serious concern that they have, I mean, that's a separate issue. But if we're just talking about a child who maybe just hasn't quite got into it yet or is a little bit bored or something like that, I think it's okay for parents to talk with each other and decide, you know, and to talk with a child. I mean, if they're old enough, you know, it won't, I don't think it would help too much to talk, you know, to a 4-year-old or necessarily a 5-year-old, but as kids get older, you can talk to them about, okay, this is the activity that you'd like to do. And we want to support you in doing that. You're going to agree to participate in so many. And of course, the child who wants to do that right away anyway, right? They're like, oh no, I'm going to love it. I'm going to be a hockey player when I grow up, right? And then they go to a few and they're like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. If you've kind of talked to them about that ahead of time and said, well, when we make a commitment to doing something, we try it for so many times. It's okay for parents to set up a plan like that, because that helps your child learn, you know, that you make a commitment and that you try to follow through, and that at some point it's really not the right thing for you, you can take a different path, but you stick with it for a period of time. And I think that's good for parents to be able to kind of set something up like that. And that's different though, of course, if there's a situation where there's truly something that's distressing your child. We do not want children to be traumatized by activities either, but usually with some support, we can help get them through that.
Well, and Mary, you mentioned, or we were going to talk a little bit then about just the social anxiety, maybe piece of a child not wanting to participate or wanting to look at an activity a little differently. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, and so kids, we're all different. Human beings are all different. Some of us are much more social by nature, and some of us are much more reserved. So part of that is just our personality. And so for some kids, the idea of summer activities is great. And for other kids, it may bring anxiety if they're going to a group where they don't know people. And that's okay. That's your child's personality, and their personality is okay. And there's always strengths with different personality styles. And so we want to be respectful of that. And kids that are having a little more anxiety, they might need a little bit more support. Sometimes it can help them maybe to talk to the teacher ahead of time. I think sometimes class instructors would be willing to just, let the child maybe drop by. And well, I don't know, with COVID now this year, those things might be a little different, but you could always ask, could we possibly stop by and, stand in a corner and watch one of your previous classes so they know what's going to happen. Those are kinds of things that might reduce their anxiety. If it's a Zoom class, maybe asking to meet somebody, the teacher, or ahead of time. Those kinds of things can help reduce anxiety. But this year also, in addition to just your typical, some kids are more comfortable or less comfortable doing new social things, we also have to realize that some kids may be very anxious, some kids, and they may not always either be able to articulate it, or they may be afraid to say that they have anxieties about the virus. They may have heard the news, they may have known people that have, had especially older relatives pass away. So for some kids, this virus itself can still be scary. And so I think especially this year, we need to keep in consideration that the idea of doing in-person things could possibly be scary. And for some kids, they won't give it a second thought, and that's okay. But if your child is anxious about that, I think that's a good time to talk with them to find out what they're comfortable with. And that if they're really worried about in-person things, maybe seeing if there's ways you can do things either by Zoom or outside in a socially distanced manner to try to help get them, because for some kids are going to daycare or school most of this time. Other kids may have been home most of this time. And so we want to respect where they're starting from and how they're feeling, and kind of, if your child's concerned about it, see if there's ways we can gradually help them get back into some in-person interactions in a manner that they feel comfortable.
And I think that's important to remember, that a lot of children coming into these activities might have had very different experiences over this last year. And so it's important to kind of meet them where they're at, and for parents to recognize, to meet children where they're at in that process. And another thing, Mary, I always think really helps, as you were thinking about that anxiety piece for children and experiencing something new, the more information we have about something, the lower our anxiety goes, right? Even for us as adults, the more information we have about something going into it, it helps relieve our anxiety. So, sharing with children information about the event, and even sometimes in our world, we talk about social stories, and creating social stories about what an event might look like can really help children kind of through that process and experiencing something new.
All right. So again, we've talked about how the activities that our community offers, and activities that you can do with your child at home, or your children can do with their grandparents or cousins, all of those are wonderful things. all of them are essential, and what most important is that balance that allows both your child to feel comfortable, but also you as a parent, for you to feel comfortable with what they're doing, and also that you're not feeling overwhelmed by having to go to so many activities, because we want you to have some joy in your summer also.
Yeah. And
Okay.
we talked,
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
we did talk a little bit about, you know, talking with children about activities
Mhm.
and, you know, finding out what their interests are, you know, what might be causing them some fear or anxiety going into a new situation, and what is really compatible with your family structure and where you're at as a family as far as what you can and cannot do over the summer.
Yep.
What I really love most though, Mary, is the next quote that you have about what children really need the most. And you put on there, for a child, attention is the sun and water enabling them to grow. And I just love that statement because it's so true for children, that really time is such a great gift for parents to give their children.
Yes. Even teenagers will act like they don't want anything to do with their parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and they might act like that. They might walk, you know, they might stomp away when you say, how was your day? They might stomp to their bedroom and slam the door. But that doesn't, that they it's sort of like that phrase, methinks they protest too much, right? That's what they don't want to admit that they want that, but they do still need your time and attention. And so from tiny little kids who literally cling to your leg because they don't want you to leave them, they clearly need your time and attention, but all kids do. And so what's most important is not that they're in special activities or, you know, that they get the fancy toys. What's most important is that they're able to spend some time with people who love them, who spend that time with them, even if you're working, even if you don't have lots of time. If when you are with them, you really notice them and you really listen to them, that's what makes the difference. That's what makes the difference is having that time where you are really attending to them, and they'll notice that.
Absolutely. So wonderful. Well, thank you, Mary, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us tonight.
I'm just thrilled. I think our community presenters tonight and also last week, and Kathleen at the United Way for giving us this opportunity. And I was so thrilled to find out about how many reduced cost or low or no cost activities that there are in the community, because those are really essential.
Absolutely.
Mary and Christy, I loved this dialogue. This was so informative. Thank you so much. And I hope I'm expressing a similar sentiment from our participants tonight. I do have one question that maybe many of us already know, but it bears, you know, repeating and reminding us. Tell us a little bit about what services you offer at Mark First.
Yeah, I can speak to that for a little bit. So Mark First is an agency that serves individuals with developmental disabilities throughout their lifespan, from birth through end of life. And so for adults with disabilities, we have different housing support services, job training and career development opportunities, so that they can work independently in our community. And we have a day training program for adults with disabilities where they can go to for social time and skill development. There's also a Friends First program so that adults can go there, and they work with master gardeners on gardening activities. They do yoga classes, they do art classes together, really continuing to learn and grow their skills throughout their lifespan too. And we have a transition program for high school children. So as children get into high school who have special needs, they're starting to think about, what is that next step for me? What is next for me? Am I going to continue my education? Am I going to get a job? And I'm going to volunteer? You know, there's so many options. And so our transition program really tries to help connect high school kids with programs within the community so that they can kind of see what their interests are and help develop a plan post high school. Now, Mary and I both work within the pediatric therapy program at Mark First, and the pediatric program serves children birth through 18 years of age. And we provide a wide variety of services. We try to think of ourselves as that one-stop shop for any family who really has a young child with special needs, having speech and occupational therapy and physical therapy and feeding and developmental therapy and social emotional services for families. We also have applied behavior analysis program for children along the autism spectrum. There's a lady on our team that is a trained sleep consultant. So for young children under the age of 10 who are having difficulty either maintaining sleep or getting to sleep, maybe with naps, she's able to help support families with those skills so that those children can get better sleep. Because if the baby or the young child's not sleeping, nobody is sleeping. So, and we really strive to support the entire family unit. So if there's something that I feel like makes Mark First Pediatric Services stand out, it's really that fact that we're there for the entire family. So we have a support group that is not diagnosis specific, that is for parents of young children with disabilities. And then we also run a program called SIB Shop, which is designed for children ages 7 to 13 who have a sibling with a developmental disability. So those siblings can get together and really share that experience of what it's like to be a sibling of someone who might be developing differently. So.
Excellent. And maybe you can put in the chat box how best to get in touch with someone at Mark First if any of those services that you just described might be of interest. So if you could put
Yeah, I'll put our website in there.
That's great. We'll put that up on our resource page as well. I did put in the chat box just a moment ago the uwmclean.org/resources, and that's where you can find tonight's recording as well as last week's recording and a whole bunch of other links to the materials presented this week and last week as well. Are there any other questions from our audience participants? Unmute yourself and speak, or if you want to put it in the chat box. We've got a few minutes left before we will wrap it up. Not hearing any. All right. Wait, there's one.
I'll go. I will go.
Perfect.
So I'm the educational liaison for the CASA office. And one of the things that I've been doing all this month is focusing on learn and play, especially activities that can be done outdoors. And keeping in mind that with CASAs, oftentimes it's a one-on-one activity with the CASA and the child in foster care, and they get together and they do stuff. And just like Mary was saying, you know, if you know Pinterest and Google, you can come up with a whole bunch of different activities. One thing that I was really wanted to make sure that I put out there for my CASAs, because especially with speech and language stuff, people really love doing bubbles. And we are advised to not do bubbles with small children simply because of the blowing and the fact that young children are not immunized yet, those kinds of things. So I thought that was an important thing to share with my CASAs, so I did. Some of the coolest stuff that I found is stuff that you can do with shaving cream. And it has to do a lot with like the motor skills. You can use shaving cream on the sidewalk outside and learn how to spread with a knife. And the bonus is that shaving cream cleans stuff up, so that that part I thought that was really, really, really cool. I made a scavenger hunt for the kids. I just took my camera out, my phone outside, and took 20 random pictures downtown Bloomington. There's a stop sign. There's a sewer grate. There is a cigarette butt. And so I made this into, I put all 20 pictures on one sheet of paper and I give it to the kids and they have to go around their block and see if they can find those things.
Right.
And what's really cool is they put stickers on top of the picture once they found it. So, you don't have to take a pencil and circle and all that kind of stuff. But the conversations have been so valuable when they ask about what is that and learning about their city. And why don't we have blue mailboxes on the corners anymore? Very interesting conversations with my little CASA guy who's 6 years old. He couldn't find a cigarette butt anywhere. And you know why? Because smoking is not safe. So they're really, really cool conversations. But anyway, as Mary and Christy were talking, I kept thinking about the activities. All this month, I've been throwing activities out at CASA's, 3 or 4 every week. Just little things that you can do one-on-one. And when you get to that last slide that Mary was showing, and the real value in all of this is the interaction between 2 kids or a kid and an old lady. And that's what really makes the experience. So I hated to take all of your time, but since this really resonated with some of the things that I've been active in all month, I wanted to take some time to share. So thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine, thank you for sharing that. And you're doing such a great job of coming up with really creative ideas for children. And what I love is you've incorporated a lot of movement activity in it. Movement just naturally helps create more language opportunities, and it kind of gets our muscles going so that we're a little bit more alert for that communication piece, which is great. And also you've incorporated that sensory piece of like the shaving cream, feeling and touching different textures. For some children, that's really fun. And for others, it's like, whoa, that feels weird and scary. So it can be really great to have different sensory experiences.
Sure.
And I agree with you on the bubbles. We're not blowing bubbles in our clinic right now either. We've invested a lot of money in bubble guns this year. So.
Wow.
And there's things you can do you can make with a string. You can make really big wands to make super big bubbles. That's kind of cool as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I love your creativity.
The
Catherine.
activity is
Thank
great
you.
because when I get home, I'm tired and the next day I'm sore. So it's all good.
That was a good day then.
It's a great day. It's a great day to
There's
be with
a
kids. And for
physical
all of you
wellness
who are doing the
aspect.
best thing for kids, kudos. They're worth it.
That's great. We try to keep these events to right about 1 hour. So we are at that point right now. I will stay on for a little bit afterwards if anybody wants to stay on and ask a question or do a follow-up. But like I've mentioned a number of times already, this information will be on our website, COVID resources information page. And the other thing that we'll be doing with to help our school partners is sharing these recordings with them so that they can, just in the nick of time before school is out, share the information shared tonight and last week with some of their school families. And I think especially tonight's conversation is, an hour that is well worth their time to listen to some of the fantastic ideas and the reasons behind the importance of play and how you can learn even through, with a can of shaving cream and, a really long bubble wand. So who knew? So thank you all to our speakers, Christy and Mary, to Desiree and Karen for speaking about some of your activities that you know about and from your organizations. Amy Hancock, again, I want to give her a special thank you for leading us to Christy and Mary. And with that, I'm going to stop recording and stop the Facebook Live and bid you all a good evening. Thank you.